Thanks, Ellen, for the tripod. We'll put it to good use and make some soup. Alright guys, we haven't made a chowder yet, so we're going to make a chowder today. And not just any chowder, we're going to make a chicken and roasted corn chowder. So I'll go through the ingredients when we come back. Okay, ingredients for the chicken and roasted corn chowder are in front of us. So we have a few stalks of celery. We've got 1 Spanish onion. We've got 4 Yukon Gold potatoes for this recipe. 1 large leek. We've got some chicken breasts. These are just roasted chicken breasts, so you can use pretty much whatever chicken you have lying around. You can buy it specifically for this recipe. In this case, these are left over from a previous dinner that I had in the freezer and I've just thawed out. You're going to need some 35% cream. Again, you could go 15% cream. You could go 2% milk with this if you want to do a slimmer version. We've got some chicken broth or chicken stock. And again, this is purchased, but you could buy you could make your own chicken broth. I got some fresh Italian parsley. We've got some frozen corn. This could be canned corn as well. This could be fresh corn on the cob if you happen to have it. We've got a can of cream corn and we've got some butter. Alright, on to the recipe. Okay guys, it's going to be a little different working with a tripod, so bear with me. Hopefully I've got you in focus and it's going to be focused on the cutting board. Let me just move you a little bit here. So, yeah. Now I'm going to be chopping, or Ellen wanted to see some chopping, so hopefully the camera doesn't bounce too much. I've got you balanced on the counter beside the cutting board, so I'm not sure whether this is going to work or not. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're just going to wash our leeks, and remember I said it's important to wash your leeks carefully because they're full of sand, so we're going to trim those leeks up. We're going to wash our celery, we're going to peel our onion, our Spanish onion, and we're going to peel our potatoes. I will give you some cup measurements and weights of those as we go along. Alright, let's try to do some of this in real time. So we've got our leeks cleaned and trimmed. Alright, so what we're just going to do now is we're just going to slice these leeks down. Not too thick slices. Remember to keep your fingers rolled back. Don't want any fingernails mixed in with the leeks. Again, I don't know if the camera's jumping with me pounding on the cutting board, but there we are with the leeks. This tool comes in very handy for picking up items off the cutting board. We're going to weigh these as I'd mentioned. I've got my little scale here. Maybe I'll just bring it over here a little closer. I'm not sure whether you can see that or not. And I don't know whether this will work, but we will try to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, as they say. Okay, we have 222 grams of carrot, and that is just about 3.5, if I compact that a little bit, 3.5 cups chopped. Alright, we'll move on to our Spanish onion next. Alright, Spanish onion. So I'd say it's a fairly large Spanish onion. I'll give you a weight. We can get that over with at least. 475 grams for the Spanish onion. Alright, what you want to do is, traditionally you want to leave a bit more of the root end on, but I haven't done that, but I'm going to go ahead and proceed anyway to show you how to properly dice an onion. So you want to cut the onion in half first of all. You need a sharp knife to do this. So all you want to do, when you're trying to make, remember this is a soup, so you want to make onion size pieces that will fit on a spoon easily. So you just sort of have to gauge it. You want to cut down in the ribs of the onion. Okay, watch your fingers. And then you want to cut down, keep your palm flat on top. Cut down, through. Again, careful. Down, through. Alright, gather it up. Slice down and through. And that will give you a nice diced onion. As you get towards the end of the onion, you may need to go a little bit deeper with your slices, your initial slices. Go down to the root end, flip the root end over, and just finish it up. And one half. If you got any stray pieces that you need to cut. Do the other half, same way. Bend down through. And there's your diced onions. Again, I'll give you a cup measurement in just a second. Alright, we're looking at about, again, 4 cups of chopped or diced Spanish onions. So we'll put those with the leeks. And we'll bring on the celery. And I've got about 3 stalks of celery here. And we are just going to slice that celery down on a slight bias, so a little bit of an angle. We're going to go all the way down to the bottom. Okay. Make sure you have a nice sharp knife when you're doing this. There's our celery, all nicely diced. I'll give you a cup measurement and a weight. Okay, we have 135 grams for weight, and we have about a cup of celery. We'll move on to the potatoes next. Okay, we've got 4 medium-sized Yukon Gold potatoes. Now, if you don't have Yukon Golds, again, I'm not too picky about my potatoes. I pick Yukon Golds because they're sort of an all-purpose potato. They're not going to break down entirely in the soup. They will retain their shape. If you had something like a baking potato, like a russet potato, in that case the potatoes are going to break down. They have more starch in them, and they are going to break down and become less recognizable pieces in the soup. You could use a new potato, like a wax potato. That would not break down. That would still be recognizable pieces. I don't find that the wax potatoes have as much flavor as something like the russets or the Yukon Gold, so to each their own. So anyway, again, you just want to dice these potatoes into spoon-sized pieces. You could stack these if you wanted to, make it go faster. Do the last 2 stacked. Potatoes can be difficult because they stick to your knife a little bit, so anyway, we'll just keep chopping away. You can roll it over onto the flat side to make it easier to cut through if you'd like to. That's probably the safest way to do it. The Yukon potato gives a nice little bit of color to the soup. That yellow actually comes through in the white soup, so adds a tiny bit more color than something like a white potato or a new potato would. I find fingerling potatoes are quite good. If you can get fingerling potatoes, they have quite a bit of flavor. With fingerlings, you could probably leave the skins on if you wanted to, but my preference is to take the skins off, particularly on the Yukon Golds. I know you can get baby Yukon Gold potatoes as well, so you could technically use a baby Yukon Gold and probably leave the skins on. But anyway, we're just going with these. So those are all diced. Get the measuring cup on the scale. We'll try to give you a weight. So we've got 765 grams of potatoes. I don't know if that's out of view or not, but probably have about 5 cups of potatoes total when they're diced. Into a bowl, and we'll move on to the corn. Alright, as I mentioned, we're going to be using frozen corn and a canned corn for this recipe. Frozen corn, I'm just going to give you a weight and cup measurement. We are going to roast this corn, and there's 2 types of ways you can roast this corn. You can actually do it in the oven on a baking tray if you wanted to. You could do it on the barbecue if you really had corn on the cob. You could easily do it on the barbecue and then just trim it off the cob. I'm going to probably just roast mine in a dry frying pan. I'll show you how I'm going to do it shortly. Anyway, 465 grams as far as a weight measurement for the corn. And again, we're about 3.5 cups of corn, frozen corn. Stick that over here on the side counter. We have a cream corn. This is a 398 ml, 14 fluid ounce tin of cream style corn. And I'll show you what we're going to do with that. I like the cream style corn because it adds a bit of creaminess to the soup. You could actually just throw a bit of regular corn in to a food processor or blender and just blend that up with a little bit of cream or milk, and that will give you cream corn as well. I've just gone ahead for sake of easiness and purchased a can of the cream corn. And we'll come back in a second. Okay, I've got a large non-stick frying pan on the fire heating up. We're going to be roasting our corn shortly. While that's heating up, I thought I would show you our chicken breasts. So I've got 6 chicken breasts here. They are about, let me give you a weight of 1 chicken breast. Now these have the skin on. I'm going to be pulling the skin off to do this soup. I just find that the skin adds too much fat to the soup, so you want to trim that skin off. I like the flavor of the skin on to do the roasting of the chicken breast, but you can remove it after you've roasted it. So we've got 108 grams approximately for each chicken breast here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to proceed to take the skin off. I'm going to have to come back because this is going to be a bit of a challenge. There's still a little bit, tiny bit frozen. Oh, maybe I can probably do this. The cat's going to be coming over soon. I'm sure it's going to smell this chicken, and it's probably going to be wanting some of this leftover chicken skin. Let's see here how easy this comes apart. We could always roast this chicken, strip the skin up some more and save it for some garnish for the soup. Maybe we'll do that. Yeah, let's do that. On the fly thinking. Alright, so again, we're just going to, again, this chicken's still a little bit frozen, and we're just going to dice this up into spoon-sized pieces. Back on the plate. As I mentioned, or maybe I didn't mention it, but I'll mention it again if I didn't. This could be any type of chicken that you have. Could be chicken thigh if you had it. It could be a deli-style chicken, that you get from the grocery store that's pre-roasted. The full chickens. It could be. We have a company up here called, or a restaurant up here, a restaurant brand up here called Swiss Chalet, and they're a rotisserie chicken restaurant. And you can buy whole chickens from them. You can order what's called a family pack. In that comes a whole chicken. I'm a single guy, live by myself. Sometimes I order the family pack, and I will have it for dinner, and we'll have leftovers. So a lot of the times with the leftover chicken, I'll end up making some sort of soup. And a lot of times I'll just throw the leftover chicken in the freezer, and then when I feel like making soup, I'll pull it out of the freezer and come up with something. So there's our chicken. let me get the cup and I'll give you a cup measurement. So I wash my hands and I've got to empty that frozen corn out. I'll come back in a second with the cup measurement of the chicken. Okay, back with the cup measurement on the chicken, and we're at about 5 cups of the diced chicken breast, roasted chicken breast. So I think the next step for us is to start cooking, and we're going to start by roasting that corn. So we'll take it off the tripod, or I'll move the tripod over towards the stove, and we'll start roasting off that corn. Alright, this is kind of weird, but I'm kind of looking through the camera backwards. But obviously you can see my large non-stick saute pan there. And we've got our corn, so this pan's been preheated. We're on very high heat. And we're just going to throw that frozen corn in here and roast it up nicely. Give it some nice extra flavor. So you're not going to try to disturb this too much. Just put a sort of, that's why I've got the large pan on here. I want to do one sort of single layer here. And we want to try to get this fairly roasted in appearance on all sides of the corn. So I'm not going to bore you and let you sit there and watch this corn roast. But I'll bring you back once it's done. Maybe we'll give you a little shot once I flip the pan. I'll turn you back on, or when I'm about to flip the pan, I'll turn you back on. All right. So this will be for extra bonus points. I am going to go ahead and use that chicken breast skin. I am going to throw it in the toaster oven and roast that up. I already had a garnish in mind for this soup, but now that garnish is going to be extra special. So this, like I can mention, is a additional step. You don't have to do this necessarily if you don't want to, but I don't like to throw things out if I can utilize them, and I know it's going to be extremely flavorful and good, so why not go ahead and do it. So we're going to throw that in the toaster oven and roast this up so it's nice and crispy and golden brown. Okay, that corn's been roasting for a few minutes, and I can just see it starting to color, so we're going to give this pan a shake. You don't have to shake it, you can just basically stir it. But get all the kernels moving off the bottom so they don't burn. And we'll continue roasting. Alright, I think we're good to give it another flip. And remember, it's not cooking until you start the fire alarm off. So that might happen. That's looking pretty good. It's looking pretty roasted. Don't want it burnt. So I think we're going to turn the heat off of that. And we'll just move it into a bowl, set it aside, and we'll start the soup. So heat's off. One more toss. And we'll take it off the heat. Okay, we're going to start to build the soup now. So the first thing we want to do is grab our butter. So we've got about 3 tablespoons of butter. We've got our pan or pot preheating. Again, this is that 5-quart cast iron enamel pan that I'm using for this soup. So the first thing you're going to want to do is add your leeks and onions once that butter melts. And we've got the pan on medium to low heat. Again, we don't want to burn these onions and leek. We don't really want to color them. We are going to have a little bit of that color in the soup because obviously we've got the roasted corn in here. But we don't want to add any additional color to the leeks or onions. So again, we're just going to sweat these down, as they say. So we've got all of the leeks and onions in the pot. And we'll give those a quick stir in the butter. And we're going to go ahead and add our celery in here as well. We're going to add a pinch of salt. And again, careful with the salt. The broth is going to be salty if you've used purchased broth like I'm going to do. So we've got our celery next. And we'll stir that in. Keeping an eye on my chicken breast skin as we speak. It's in the toaster oven behind the camera. It's browning up nicely. Kitchen's definitely smelling good. So what we're going to do is, again, we're going to sweat these onions down, onions, leeks, and celery down. We're going to pop the lid on, probably for about 5 minutes or so. That'll probably reduce that volume by about half. So, lid's on, we'll turn you off, and we'll come back in about 5 minutes. Stir them occasionally. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes, and you can see that the veg mixture is now sort of sweated down a little bit. I did not mention the next step earlier. Now this is optional. I'm going to add some flour here. I like a fairly thick chowder. If you want a thinner chowder, or a thinner soup, I guess you would probably call it, because chowders generally are fairly thick in my mind. If you wanted to add some body to your chowder, you can add a little bit of flour. I have a 1/4 cup of flour here. Don't know whether I'm going to use it all, but I want to just basically dust the top of this vegetable mixture before I put my stock in here. I'm going to dust the top, stir it in, and then add my stock. Again, this is an optional step. Now remember that the potatoes that you add later in this soup are going to add some starch and thickening to it as well. So be careful not to, if you do go the flour route, be careful not to overdo it at this point. So again, I'm just going to dust the top of this. This is a 1/4 cup I'm starting with. And I think we'll go ahead and use that 1/4 cup. So we're just going to stir that in. We've got our stock standing by. At this point you could add a little bit of white wine if you wanted to, but I'm not going to do that. So you could use veg stock. I'm not sure what the point would be to use veg stock, because this is a chicken and corn, roasted corn chowder. So, but you could use veg stock if you wanted to. But at this point we're going to add our chicken stock. We've got 2 liters. We're going to add a little bit to begin with. And we're going to get rid of our spatula. And we're going to go for a spoon. And we'll stir that in. Crank the heat up to about medium, just to help this process along. You'll notice obviously once you add the stock with some heat, that flour is going to start to thicken this almost immediately into glue or wallpaper paste. So it's already absorbed that. We're going to add some more stock. Probably add another, so that's about 3/4 of that 1st liter in here now. We'll just mix that around again. So what you want to do now is you want to just continually add this stock. We're going to bring this up to a boil. That's nicely mixed. I'm going to turn my chicken skin off because it's looking good. Don't want to be too dark. I'm looking for chicken skin that I can actually slice into thin julienne strips. If I overcook it, then it's just going to shatter into small little shards. So we'll see if I've managed to get that cooked properly. We're adding the rest of the stock in now. So that's a full 2 liters of chicken stock. And we'll stir that in. Alright, we'll bring that up to a boil like I'd mentioned. Give it a stir occasionally. You know, that flour wants to sort of go to the bottom of the pot and stick and burn on the bottom of the pot, and that's definitely not something that we want. We don't want brown, burnt flour bits in this soup. The only thing we want brown and roasted looking is the corn. Maybe the chicken. Alright, we'll come back after that's come to a boil. I won't keep you watching until this comes to a boil because the pot will never boil. Just thought I'd give you a quick look at that chicken skin. As you can see, it's rendered most of its fat. So that's what we're looking at. It's pretty crispy, but again, I didn't want to make it overly crispy. So there you go. I'm just going to put that in the fridge and reserve it for the soup garnish. Alright, the soup has just come back to the boil. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add our potatoes and corn. So we'll add our diced potatoes. Give that a quick stir. And we'll add in our roasted corn. Remember, we have cream to add to this yet, so we're going to let this soup reduce a little bit while those potatoes cook. The last thing we need to add is our creamed corn. So just grab a spatula here. Again, I'm adding this creamed corn because it's going to give it a nice creaminess to this soup, and it's going to introduce a lot more flavor. Alright, so there's our creamed corn. Give that a stir. Looking pretty good. Nice big pot. So what we'll do now is we'll turn this back down to a simmer, and we'll simmer this soup until it's reduced slightly. And then we're going to add, we still have obviously our chicken to add, and we have our cream to add. I'm also going to do some seasonings at a later point. Probably just going to add some fresh ground black pepper to this, and we'll check for our salt as well. And anyway, we're just going to let that cook, reduce, and cook those potatoes. We'll be back. Alright guys, we're just coming up to the 25-minute mark, and I've just had a quick taste of those potatoes to see if they're tender yet. So I've just pulled one out, pulled a larger specimen of the potatoes out, and had a try, and it is just perfectly tender. You don't want to overcook it so much that the potatoes fall apart. As I mentioned, you want to see recognizable potatoes. So that's what it's looking like now. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some seasoning. So we're going to add some black pepper at this point. So I've got my, again, my pepper grinder set on coarse. That one's almost empty. We'll grab another one. I like lots of pepper. Again, technically this is a white soup. Technically, it should be white pepper in this soup, but again, it's got that roasted corn in there anyway with some little brown bits in it. So I'm going to go ahead and add my black pepper because I like black pepper. So we will stir that in, and we're just about ready to add our chicken and our cream. Alright, so that black pepper is stirred in. The soup's looking pretty good. Hopefully we're going to have enough room to get our chicken in there. It's going to be tight. But if you're going to make soup, you may as well make a full pot, right? Oh yeah, no problem. Stir that chicken in. Guess who that is? Old Crazy Les must be smelling the soup from his house. Anyway, I'll be back. Guess who's coming for lunch? Old Crazy Les. He's apparently out and about in secret storage location number 3 today, and moving some cars around and needs some help, so he's going to come pick me up. He's going to have a bowl of soup, and then we're going to head out and move some cars, so it's probably a good idea that we've got some nice hearty soup to fill us up before we do some hard work. Anyway, we're going to grab that cream. Let me just grab a measuring cup. Don't need a lot of cream, but I'm probably going to put at least a cup in there. Again, I'm using 35% cream, but you could use 15% cream or 10% cream. So there's a cup of 35% cream. We're going to bring that soup back up to the boil, and we are going to finish it with some chopped parsley. So we'll stir that cream in. You can see it's already starting to come back to a boil. Careful when you're stirring this now. Looking good. So we just want to basically bring that cream up to the boil. The chicken will be heated through by then. The potatoes, everything else is cooked. So we're good. So I will chop that parsley while this comes back to the boil. And I'll bring you back once we add that in. Alright, our final step is to add that chopped parsley. So we've got just a little less than half a cup of chopped parsley. You can see it's almost to the top of the half a cup measure. You could definitely put a half a cup in, you could put a quarter cup, you could put nothing if you didn't like parsley in this, but it does add a nice fresh element of flavor at the end of this soup. So we'll just stir that in, and then we are good to go as far as plating this up. Looking pretty good. So we'll wait for Les to show up, and I think his buddy Sean is coming along as well, so good thing I made some soup. Now I only wish the house was a little cleaner. Okay, Les and Sean are here. This is about my 4th take because Les won't shut up. Listen to him in the background, cackling. Anyway, here's the soup. And we're just about to garnish it, so we're going to use some tortilla strips and that aforementioned chicken skin that we've crisped up. So we'll just add a little bit of the tortilla strips. We'll add a bit of that chicken skin. I'm going to serve it with a nice rosemary pull-apart bread. So enjoy.